I'm stoked to have this conversation with you both. The way this started out was that, Dave, you did a workshop for us on AI at the Core Summit in October. And I think you had like 2 slides where you mentioned this thing called Centium AI. And I was like, whoa, 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 hold on. I mean, you had a very interesting workshop. But I was like, hold on, wait a minute. Let's talk about this. And then you were graciously connected me with Michael, the founder of Centium AI. So here you both are. I'd love to just get a little bit from both of you. What's your background? What are you doing today? What led you to this? And then like, how are you two connected? So, Dave, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm David Kenworthy. I'm the director of digital at MMGY Origin. So we're an outdoor focused marketing agency. I personally look after the digital team, looking at all our web and digital projects and apps. Um, I was graciously invited to speak at that Core Summit, and AI is the really was my in there because we've been trying to speak there for a little while, and we've been doing a lot of work around how the discoverability of brands within AI. And I actually read an article where Michael was featured talking about the snow sports industry, which is one of our primary places. And I was like, I got to speak to Michael. So I just cold outreached, and Michael actually, I'm sure he'll explain to you, works at a ski resort as well as being the founder of Centium. So we had a lot of connectivity, and he'd already heard of Origin. So we got along like a house on fire, and he graciously gave me some intel and some data that I was able to use in that session. And we'll talk a lot about that today because it has progressed. It was only 6 or 8 months ago that we had that session, and a lot has changed. So thanks for inviting me onto this, Christian. I
Yeah,
appreciate
for
it.
sure. Michael, let's hear about you.
Yeah, hey everyone. I'm Michael Ruckert. I am the founder of Centium AI. I wear a lot of hats. I'm involved in quite a few things. As David mentioned, I'm head of marketing at Snow Basin Resort, ski resort here in Utah. Been there for about 6 years. Before that, I worked in college athletics and have this whole sports marketing background where when I was there, I oversaw marketing for 12 different sports teams. And through that, I'm a professor at the University of Utah in sports marketing and the business school. And so my background is all about sports, outdoors, tourism, marketing. And that led me to build Centium. And it came from the perspective of a brand leader thinking about how are our customers going to be making decisions in this AI era. And this is early in the process before I think the kind of buzzword of AEO or GEO or whatever you want to call it was a thing. And so it started with experimentation, and eventually, experimentation leads to more, and it leads to building and vibe coding and, all the above. And now we have a platform that over 100 brands use, and been connected with David on that. And I love talking to David about AI. Just like, put business aside and just someone really smart and really plugged into the space. And I could talk for hours with David about AI and just kind of going back and forth. So it's been a great just partnership and collaboration. And I feel like we get along super well and trying to get ahead of what's to come.
That's exactly why I wanted to have you guys on here. And as I said before we recorded, I'm just going to tee you up and let you guys riff because I am definitely on the sidelines, so to speak, when it comes to AI. I'm trying to do my best to use it and learn about it and follow it along because, obviously, all the smart people are saying this is where we're headed, like it or not. So it's important for us to have this conversation as it pertains to the outdoors, because I think it's not necessarily a conversation I hear a lot about is like, how does this pertain to the outdoor industry? So let's just jump into maybe laying some foundation of like helping me understand and helping the audience understand like how AI models train, and then like what does Centium help us do to be noticed by those LLMs as from a brand and marketer perspective?
Yeah, so if you get down to the very fundamental level of how AI trains, and it has essentially indexed the history of the internet, takes the history of humans putting content online, and they've fed that into the models to train. They, to try to simplify a very complicated process, they take all of the text over the course of the internet. They calculate associations between words. They turn words into numbers, and they calculate associations between those, and it's called tokenization. And AI essentially becomes a prediction mechanism. And so if I'm looking for running shoes and it's indexed all this content on the internet, what word usually comes next when you're looking for a running shoe brand? And AI assigns probability to um, those words, and it all comes down to how it's trained. And so AI is feeding on content on the internet. It can't use the product. It can only rely on what it sees online. And so it trains on mass content to form these associations and understand, essentially predicting what word comes next. But it's not that simple. It does a whole lot more than that. It's very logical, and it reasons and it calculates and it searches and it finds the latest information and it pulls it all together. And this kind of magical formula gives us this thing that feels very superhuman. And so what Centium does is we create a mass data set to essentially put AI in an environment where we can understand with pretty high accuracy where it likes to go. And so in that running shoe example, we run hundreds of prompts. We push them across 5 models. We hit them with all kinds of different angles about why someone would want running shoes. And we measure who AI talks about. And probably more importantly, where they like to source content and where they like to look to get that information so that a brand can get ahead of it and position themselves in the right path.
I think something to just add to what you just said is even content that isn't text-based gets created into text-based content. So videos is like the prime example. Every podcast transcript that has ever existed, it takes all of everything that we speak about today, goes on the internet. That transcription ends up as those words, and that goes into that model as well. And so it's not just, every piece of everything that's ever existed. And there's plenty of lawsuits out there for every book and copyrighted piece of material that exists, everything. So and the second thing is with this is the cutoff that these models have as well. We'll talk a little bit about that because I know, Christian, with Core specifically, there's lots of startup brands. There's lots of brands that have existed for a while. And then there's some of those bigger brands that listen to this podcast. And I think that we're going to talk about how unfairly weighted it is to those that have existed for a really long time, because the training data gets cut off. So most of those training sets end 6 to 18 months, Michael, ago, most of them?
Yeah, I'd say most are about 6 to 18 months ago on average.
So yeah, every social media post, every book, every podcast, every song, you ask it the next word in any song you could riff on, and it will know those things. So that's the really important thing to know is at this point in time, we do find that to put it really, really broadly, the more content you have online, the more recognized you're going to be. And so for startups, obviously that makes like a really, really big difference. But what Michael's platform is able to do is simulate what users are doing in the real world. So if I'm searching for, and we'll talk about a little bit more about personalization in a minute, if I'm searching for the best running shoe, would have been historically how we did it in Google, right? Best running shoe. Google would list all of the websites that had running shoes, and you'd click on Hoka's or on Clouds. You go on the website, you'd research, then you go back to Google, you go to the next one. You go back to Google, you go to the next one. AI is skipping all of that. It's basically syndicating all of that information online, and it's giving you a recommendation. So what Michael's tool is able to do is understand, why did it pick Hoka's over on Clouds? Why did it choose to show you that way? And typically what it's doing is looking at your personalized experience with that or personalized query. So that might be, I have really weak ankles and I have really wide feet. I want to start running. I'm brand new to it. It gains so much more context to that. It also knows a lot about you, right? My single biggest, I'm mainly a Claude user. That's my primary LLM. And every time I use other models, I don't like them as much because the memory that Claude has of me, it knows I don't have weak ankles, but it would know I had weak ankles. It would know I had wide feet. And so it would go and it would not only search the context that I put into there, it would also take into account the things that it has committed to memory. And so what Michael's platform is able to do is take all of those really detailed things and run thousands and thousands of prompts in these models to get the most accurate picture. And, maybe we'll share a little bit of an example today as we go through, just to show how that data works. But I think that's really important.
Yeah, I wanted to add just a couple points to that. And so the way AI answers a prompt, it does it in one of 2 ways. And I teach a class on campus, so I like to think about this in almost like giving an exam. And so one way AI answers a prompt is a closed book exam. we take AI, we put it in a room, we close the door, and we're asking it for running shoes. And it can only answer based off what it knows. It's data that it has indexed and trained on to date. And so as David mentioned, there's a 6 to 18 month lag on that information. And so that's a huge hurdle for a startup to overcome. The the Nikes of the world and the Hokas and brands that are a little bit more established have just far more training data available to that AI model. One of the key sources of AI training data is called Common Crawl. It's been around for, I think, over 18 years. It's indexed billions, hundreds of billions of web pages. And that's been one of the kind of free meals that AI has been feeding on to learn. And so that's one way. It could be the closed book exam. But luckily, these models have evolved and they're more sophisticated than that. And they'll search the internet. And when you use AI, you'll see if it searches or not. It depends if it drops the little blue links. It makes the decision if it wants to search or not. And if it searches, that delayed learning is no longer an issue for you. It's going to go out and pull in relevant insights. It combines those relevant insights with its knowledge in its head and kind of syndicates it into one answer. And so being mentioned in PR and news and new content when AI is going out seeking fresh content can really help you in that space. And so there's two different ways it works, and you should really be optimizing for both, but you can fast track your visibility in that space through the search mechanism. And the other point I wanted to riff on just with David here is, the memory piece I think is really interesting. And I think that's where AI is going to be moving, and personalization I think is going to be far, far more important as this starts to evolve. And somebody's personal preferences and users' needs and wants, I think, are, as we look into 2026 and 2027, I definitely think that's where this is going to go, is more memory, more personalization, more agentic, pulling a user what they really, really want.
One thing, and I just want to jump in there for a second and say one thing that I want to clarify on is, so you said there's a lag between 6 and 18 months. So if you're a startup who just launched 6 months ago, theoretically the models haven't been trained on any of your content because they stopped indexing it, basically when you came online. However, you just dropped in the fact that they are now kind of going out and searching the internet. Is this going forward? Is there any indication of like that lag time is going to decrease, or is that always going to be the way it is, or do we have kind of like, in the next 12 months we could actually potentially just have real time crawling, so to speak?
Well, we have real time through them searching, but I don't think there's going to be, at least we're not seeing any indication that they are real time training. And an example of that is Gemini just went from 2.5 to 3.0. Gemini 2.5 has a knowledge cutoff, and that's the date at which they stopped feeding the model information of January 2025. Mm. And when Google went from 2.5 to 3.0, that knowledge cutoff date stayed the same. It did not change. And so when they released the new model, it doesn't appear that they trained it on new content. It appears they probably trained it on other things, and maybe the way it reasons and thinks and calculates and things like that. So I think they have to have a cutoff point at which they're training, and then they rely on search from there. So to the startup, the brain of the AI doesn't know about you in general, depending how new they are. Or if it knows about them, it doesn't know enough about them to confidently mention them. But luckily, this is an open book exam. And so when we ask it a question, it's also going to go out and seek relevant information, and they could surface in that way. And so they really need to be optimizing towards being mentioned in a variety of places so that when AI searches, it finds them and discovers them.
Yeah, I think the reason for the cutoff is something that goes back to the original thing that Michael shared around tokenization. So when they take every single piece of information on the internet, they ingest all of that information, and then the outputs that they get typically from that by predicting the next word is just a bunch of garbage. And so they tweak a bunch of knobs. Think of it like a DJ set with all these little knobs. They're like turning and tweaking all these knobs, and that will help to refine the thinking and the way and the output. So the reason they have a cutoff is because they tweak and twist all these knobs to get the perfect output. And typically what they're doing is just tweaking and twisting these knobs up into a point. And then if they then ingest another 6 months or another 12 months, they can't just tweak and twist the knobs on the 6 to 12 months. They have to then go back and look at the whole thing. So they now have to take the whole bracket of information, ingest that, because if just general, let's say, for example, the way that language is used has changed, like the youth of today say words that I don't even know exist. And I'm 35 and I'm terrified that that's already a thing. So now you have to train and use it on different parameters, and those knobs need to be turned differently, which is why it's like why they have those cutoffs. So I think that's really important to know. It's not for any other reason than that at this point.
Okay, cool. So then I guess the question then is, where are these AIs going out to learn? Like if I've got a brand, whether it's a startup or established brand, like where's it going? What do we need to do to put out there so that actually I can train it so that it's working to my advantage?
So this is something David and I go back and forth on a lot. Because Centium is so heavy in the outdoor industry, we have a really big data set on outdoor brands. We're approaching about 100 outdoor brands specifically on Centium. And so if we pool all of their data together, we start to understand with very high sample size, over 100,000 prompts and hundreds of thousands of citations where AI goes. And there's a few things that it really likes. It really likes user reviews. Review platforms are something across, I think, any industry that AI really likes. And it loves expert, it's still kind of in the review category, but you could start to approach the PR space with this. It loves expert opinion. And so across all outdoor brands that we have measured, Gear Lab is the most cited source. We see Gear Lab, and then each specific outdoor product has their own specific outlets. For example, for running shoes, we'll see Runner's World index extremely high. Or in the bike, we work with quite a few brands in the cycling industry, and we'll see Cycling Weekly and all the different biking outlets index highly. And so I think where people would maybe think AI goes, like, oh, maybe they're going to outside, or maybe they're going even above outside. Maybe they're going to USA Today or GQ or some of these big New York Times legacy outlets. That's not necessarily the case. They go to the real key authority signals in that industry. And so brands, it becomes really important to get other people talking about you. Otherwise, AI is not going to be able to use the product themselves.
Yeah. And I got my career start in SEO, and I was doing SEO 15, 17 years ago. And the way some of the things now that AI is doing, I'm seeing personally come full circle. High authority. Do you remember domain authority? And you'd go to Mars and you'd type a website in and get its domain authority, and then you try and get a link on it. Those things are coming full circle because at the end of the day, these models do not want to get it wrong, right? That's actually one of the scariest things for them is this whole thing where it started around hallucination. They still hold on to that. They're like worried. They don't want to hallucinate. So they're going to trusted sources within the authority to get that information. So what we see when we look at all this data is, they will come to your website to get product information and things like that. But if they're looking for, they'll look at review lists. So they'll go to Bike Radar and they'll look at the best, Enduro bike 2026, because that trusted authority source is a third-party source that is also a high-quality domain. And so the old link building technique or PR or advertorial, whatever you want to call it, a lot of those these days are pretty much all pay to play, unfortunately. But being high authority in those places, again, it's like the old school SEO. We're back into that place, I think. And that's not to say that it won't change. This is something that Michael and I have talked about, is what is a ranking factor today will constantly change, just like it did with SEO back in the day. If everyone remembers the Panda and the Penguin updates that came to Google search, where it completely revolutionized the way that brands and websites got ranked. I think the same thing is likely to happen in the AI world. But the thing with Centium right now is we have all this data, and we can really start to see where you should be right now to be up in that search as consumers start to kind of use that as their primary method of finding running shoes or hiking boots or whatever it might be.
I just want to go down a rabbit trail for 1 second, because I brought this up to Michael, and it's something that just keeps ringing in my ears because you just brought it up about, so AI is going to trusted authority sites like Gear Junkie, And then that's where they're grabbing the information from and bringing back to the consumer. What happens in the future? Okay, so then you also have now the consumer is going straight to the AI instead of to the site, right? And so those sites are built and lasted off of advertising, right? So what happens when their traffic goes down, from consumers, ad spend goes down? It's like we need the site, but then people stop going to the site. Now it's just the AI bots going to the site. Do we start charging a toll for the AI bots to go so that we keep these sites running to be domain authorities? Because if I stop going to those sites and I just go to the LLM, I mean, I know this is just crystal ball right now, but I'm just curious what you guys think about that.
I think that's a really good point. AI is essentially killing their sources that feeds them. I actually have an example of this. We've worked with a lot of ski resorts, probably a dozen or more, and so I've compiled all the data, and we know where AI likes to go when they look at ski resorts. And one of those most authoritative sources, I had a contact, she's an editor there, and I reached out to him. I'm like, hey, guess what? Like, great news. AI loves to reference your content. And I was expecting them to, see dollar signs in their eyes and, be thinking about, oh, this is amazing. This is such a great opportunity for us. And I realized real quick what they really think about AI, and it's their traffic's going down, and AI it's referencing their content, which could help them. It establishes them as credibility, but if they don't click through, it's exactly what you mentioned. They're not generating any revenue on that. And so I think it's really, I think it's going to be very interesting to see where this goes. And being traffic heavy to generate revenue is the most trusted way to, I think, for these platforms to make recommendations, because we know it's authentic. They don't care about what brand they mention. We know it doesn't really work like that, but in theory, they don't care about what brand they mention. They're just optimizing for advertising. But then if people stop going to the sites and the advertising gets cut off, then I feel like it probably becomes a little bit more of a pay to play model. And affiliate marketing, I know, plays into that as well. And so I think the business model in that space is going to be very interesting to see where that goes. And these high authority websites, although they are receiving a lot of love from AI, they are not seeing the traffic, unfortunately.
So I hope no one from Gear Junkie is listening to this podcast, because what I would say to that is, if I'm Gear Junkie and I know that all the time I'm being cited as a source of truth for information for ranking for Rueckert, and Rueckert comes to me and says, I want to do some ads on your site, I charge them. It suddenly is just more expensive, because I'm going to get you less clicks and I'm going to get you less, but you're actually, now the metric is no longer, views on a banner on our website or views on an article on our website. It's bot impressions, right? So the metric is different, and you're probably going to charge more for it, because you know that you're going to get people ranking in these AI models. The other thing that I just, two stats that kind of are really a turning point for me is this. We're seeing about 60% of all Google searches end in 0 clicks right now. That's the benchmark right now. So if 60% of people that Google anything don't go to a website anymore. So when I look at, I did a study just on our travel and tourism websites. Every travel and tourism website, I think there's about 65 that we manage at this point. That's leading to a 35% decrease in traffic year over year. So you're getting 35% less traffic. But then there's another thing that is really scary to me, or really interesting to me, is 50% of the traffic on the internet today is bots and 50% is humans. So it brings me back to this old paradigm do you remember when we used to have a mobile website and we used to have a desktop website? It was like m.hoka.com, let's just say. And then eventually those two became the same. And then eventually mobile traffic increased. And then we started to prioritize mobile, and it was all mobile first. And it was a turning point at about 50% where people were like, okay, do we build this for mobile? Or do we build it for desktop? Well, now we're at this kind of crappy place where it's like 50% of the internet is bots and 50% is humans. Who do you build websites for these days, right? Do you build them for humans or do you build them for robots? And I would hazard to guess that the bot number is going to keep going up, just like the mobile number kept going up. And so all of these signals, like when you put them in place, is like, who do we build websites for, and what's the information that we display to them? Because, it is changing dramatically and very quickly.
Yeah, in your workshop, you brought up this really good point about that I never thought about is about essentially like an accordion on a website. So if you've got a product page, and you've got these drop downs that you've got to click, well, theoretically the bot can't click, right? So we spent all these years getting Shopify best practices, like have this great accordion, and now it's useless. Actually, it's not useless; it's detrimental theoretically. And you brought up this idea of like, basically having a gateway where, are you human or are you bot? And you're going to have two different doors that you enter an e-commerce website on.
And so that point is incredibly valid, with the one delineation between bots versus agents. So bots can will actually scrape the code of the web page. Will take all the information out of everything. So if something's maybe it's like return policy, that when you we always put return policy or gear care or size charts in these little accordions. I think that bots can scrape all of that, no problems. They can index it. But agents today, not to say that agents in the future, the way that agents work is they come to a website, they screenshot the website, and then they take information and read it. If things are hidden in accordions, for the most part at this point in time, those agents can't open those accordions. So therefore, information is hidden to them. That said, I've been using, I don't know, Michael, I know Michael's big on the vibe coding, but I've been using the Google anti-gravity recently, and it's kind of an agent development platform. And I've just been building some websites just for my own purposes to just play around in software, and they can click UI now. And so I think that's changing really, really quickly, is what those agents can do. But right now, I do believe that if somebody is searching using an agent, they're not going to see that information for sure.
I wanted to riff on something where, David, I think I haven't heard it described that way, but I think it's really interesting. The comparison on mobile versus desktop, and now bot versus human is seeing that same perspective. And I think as the website becomes the hub of information, that's ultimately just feeding the LLM, and the transactions, I think, will probably move to the LLM as well. I think marketers and we'll all have some very interesting decisions to make on all of the fluff and for the perspective of a robot nonsense that we put on our websites. They want the text, they want the specs, they want the information, right? They want the structured, simple, easy to ingest data. And will we have a bot version of the website and a human version of the website, or are we going to be shifting into this more bot-driven page? I think is very interesting, because this is where it is now. And commerce is already integrating onto LLM. Shopify has integrated, and Walmart is integrated, and there's lots more that have integrated onto ChatGPT. And I think commerce will be brought into the models where they don't necessarily need to go to your website to purchase things into the future. And so how do you feed the cleanest, best data to AI in that space? And so I think optimizing for bots in the future, but then also optimizing for just clean e-commerce, I think will be very important.
Yeah, and to go a step further on that is what happens when, hey, I need a new MagSafe charger for my phone. That's all I tell it. And the agent actually goes out and it does all of that research. It doesn't even ask me, it just purchases for me on my behalf, and it gets shipped to me. It's like, how do these models make those decisions and those preferences when it's all directly integrated? And the thing for me is we shouldn't be, I believe we shouldn't necessarily be scared that we're going to get less web traffic to our website, so long as our sales aren't going down, right? The consumers are still there. Actually, global search traffic on the internet is exponentially growing. There's more search traffic than there's ever been before, because people aren't just having one query in Google now. They're having, hundreds of queries across ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini. So long as we are where our consumers are and where our consumers are purchasing, or where our consumers' agents are purchasing, that's what actually matters to me. So if you're not on Shopify right now and you're selling an e-commerce product, you're probably going to be at a huge disadvantage, because the consumer is moving to these platforms to purchase, and platforms like Shopify are at the forefront where they're putting their products in those platforms. So long as sales don't go down, like our ultimate goal is selling our product and promoting our product and getting it into people's hands or on people's backs. And that's where we need to be at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think very much in that same way on where this is moving, and agentic agentic behavior, I think, is going to take over. We rely on a world right now where we are searching for what we want. And I think the model is going to bring us what we want instead. I think search will always be relevant and always be a core part of our business, but I think these models will be a little bit more predictive, and I think they will bring you what you're looking for. For example, we just got through the holidays. We're all buying gifts for people. I would love if a model would just get ahead of that and recommend what I should be purchasing for my mother or something like that. Or you're going on vacation and arranging your restaurants for you and making reservations for you at, it knows you like sushi. And so it finds the best sushi restaurant in town and books a reservation. I think the era of searching and web traffic, and I think that is going to be far less important. And I think models will be a lot better at bringing things to you. And from day one, when I started building Centium, this is what I've been building towards. It's less about keywords and optimizing and a clever, catchy headline to try to trick the LLM. Like, I don't think that really works when they've indexed billions of web pages. I think it becomes more about brand perception and what does the model think about you, and that really matters now while they're making recommendations to somebody. But what if these models are your future customers? What if they're actually the ones making the purchases? And so it really matters what that customer thinks about you. And that's what Centium is trying to measure by high sample size, hitting AI from quite a few angles. And that brand perception and turning AI into your ambassador, I think, is very, very important because it could be your future purchaser.
Okay, I just want to define some terms really quickly because we're dropping bots and agentic, and I know there's people listening who are saying, "What now?" So let's just define some terms for me, if you would.
David, I think you're probably the best to represent this one.
So essentially, they are the same thing. It's what they do that is different. So if we talk about bots, and let's just use this as the term that as we talk about, the bot is like a crawler. So we've always known the term crawlers, that they was used when we were back in the SEO days. It is a bot, or it is a system that comes to your website. It reads the code. It can navigate through links throughout the site and treats it like a spider web. It starts at one page, maybe your home page, and then it clicks on this page and it moves its way through the website, and it's grabbing all of the code and it's grabbing all of the content that's on the website, and it's using that and training on that information. So when we talk about bots coming to the website, that's typically what we mean. We see bots filling in web forms. It's why we all get spam on our web forms. It's like, and we have practices in place to try and stop bots from filling in web forms. We have robots.txt to tell them where they're allowed to go on our website and things. But essentially, that's what the bot side of it is. The agent side of it, again, it is a robot at the end of the day, and it is executing code. Think of that more like a digital version of yourself that is coming to the website, and it's using it more like a human would use it. It's visiting the website. It's filling in forms. It's making purchases. It's actually doing things on the website. I think that's like a really how these things actually work. There's lots of underlying similarities, but then there's lots of differences on top. But fundamentally, that's the difference I would say, between a bot and an agent. I don't know if you have any, Michael, do you want to add anything?
No, I think you nailed it. And when I talk about agentic AI, when I think about the future of agents are people that act and they don't need your permission to do things. I think about automations and agents that will, there's a lot of agents right now already that will maybe scan your email inbox and every morning deliver you a summary of what you should be doing today. There's already people developing in this agentic space, and agents are able to have, I guess, permission to act a lot further than a typical LLM would. You're giving it authority over a defined set of parameters. And so when I think about the future of agentic AI, I think it's my assistant that has authority to make purchases, or it has authority to send texts on my behalf or send emails on my behalf. Of course, there's going to be a transition to get there, and the leash is very short right now, and we'll start to let off the leash eventually, and I'm sure eventually we'll give it quite a bit of autonomy. But I think about agentic in that space on your personal assistant who is doing things for you.
I recently got access to a beta platform called Scout. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. It's again, it's an agentic platform. Their example of the primary Scout is this Scout is given a task. So their example was booking a tennis court. So this Scout goes and you say, I want to play tennis this week. And that's its job, is to find you a tennis court. It goes out, it finds, the the tennis court is completely booked up, and every day it's going back every minute by minute. If somebody cancels a call, boom, it goes in, and it actually books that tennis court on your behalf, and it adds it to your calendar, and it tells you this is when you're going to play tennis. And I think that's something that we've seen. We've all tried to buy concert tickets, right? There's always been robots that have been in there that within milliseconds, the Miley Cyrus concert's gone. No human can ever buy a ticket these days. And it's that same thing. It's like these bots are constantly out there doing things and executing on tasks that are quicker. I think the thing that's really wild to me, and I think this is where we're going, and we've seen leaks over the last few days within OpenAI's wearable, or OpenAI's new device, being something that exists on you at all times. So me and my girlfriend are having a conversation. She mentions this really amazing book that she really wants to read, or this, this product that she wishes she had. If I'm really on it as a boyfriend, I go into my phone and I write a little note and I say, for a birthday, I should buy this book, right? I don't need to even be the good boyfriend anymore. What I do is this wearable says, hey, it's coming up to May 14th, her birthday. 3 weeks before, it goes back through its logged memory because it's existed in my world this whole time. It purchases that thing, it turns up on my door wrapped, and it has a beautiful message that's written by me. Very impersonal. But at the same time, that's the kind of level that we're at, is these wearables and these things will be in our worlds. They will be in our technology, in our inbox, in our email calendar, and they know everything about us. And we give them guardrails that they're allowed to execute within. So I might say, never make a purchase more than $50 that isn't returnable with my, free returns. That might be my parameters. But what I see is like those parameters getting wider and wider and wider to a point where we just give it has our credit card, it does whatever it wants. And I remember it must have been 10 years ago now, I worked for this luxury grandfather clock company, of all things, doing their SEO. These grandfather clocks were $10,000 to $20,000. Well, £20,000 because I was in the UK back then. And we said, no way on this planet is somebody going to buy one of these things sight unseen on the internet. No way. And for years and years and years, no one did. And then one day somebody bought one. And the next day somebody bought one. And the next day 2 people bought them. And I'm like, whoa, this is crazy. People's like willingness to put their credit card into a form online became more and more and more. People put millions of dollars on the internet now and make transactions. And I think the same thing is going to happen with AI. Right now, it's pretty scary to give AI your credit card and say, go make purchases on my behalf. But in time, I think we'll have systems and processes where we don't really care about those things anymore.
I like to use the analogy of hiring an employee. We all hire employees and have people, that have probably worked under us at one point in time. And early when you hire an employee, you're probably checking almost all of their work and you're training them and you're holding their hand. But eventually you want to step away and you want them to just autonomously do their job. And maybe you just step in when you need to, or when there's a problem, or to check in. And I think about AI in that space. I think right now it's an intern that we have to probably check all of its work and hold their hand. But I think in the future, it's going to become a pretty sophisticated manager, and maybe it'll become a director one day. And I think you will loosen the leash and give it more and more capability. While we're talking about bots, though, or before we move on from bots, I did want to just call out a quick tip for anyone listening. David mentioned robots.txt. All of you have this. So if you go to your website /robots.txt, it's the instructions, or it's where you are allowing bots on your website. And I think 95% of brands are probably doing this in a really smart way, but I've seen this a few times across Centium, where a brand will come to Centium, which shows that they are optimizing towards AI. They care about this. They want to be mentioned by models. And then we dig into their robots.txt file and they're blocking the models from being able to access their content online. And so, it could have been some IT person 2 years ago saying their server is overwhelmed by ChatGPT's training bots. And so they cut off access for ChatGPT's training bot. So it's probably smart to just fact check yourself and go to your domain /robots.txt, and you'll see the web pages that you're giving AI access to, but also the specific models that you're giving access to. On Centium, we do this for brands, and we put it in a kind of easy to look at view so they could see, hey, you're blocking Gemini from being able to cite your website. And we've seen this, it's about 5% of the time. So something to just check on if you care about being mentioned by AI.
You bring up a good
E-
point that I wanted to move into, and that is essentially what should we be doing with our websites, starting now in 2026 and moving forward? Like, what are the best practices that we need to start putting into place? If you're on Shopify, you're going to be kind of at the maybe not the cutting edge, but as close as you can be, especially on a small budget as a startup. They're going to be working on your behalf. But what are the best practices that we should be thinking about in 2026?
I can start with just from the technical perspective that you should make sure that the developer that you're working with is hot on this topic, because there are some basic technology things that you should be doing with the code. You should have clean, well marked up semantic code. That basically means that you only have one H1 on a page. Your headings are all semantically laid out, that your code is clean and isn't filled with lots of what we call like let's just say garbage. Is basic SEO principles. All the things that we've banged on about for years. Your images on 20 megabytes, they have good alt text, that you have schema.org markup on your content. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. If you are really cautious and careful with your code and making this site performant, then you're going to do a great thing. We always talked about this idea within SEO that we talked about crawlers, or a bot coming to your website and crawl it. It has a certain amount of memory or bandwidth when it comes to your site. Let's just say it has it has 5 minutes of bandwidth. If every page load takes lots of time and takes, the pages are really poorly organized, by the time it gets through a couple of pages, it's run out of its capacity and it bails from the site. If your site's really well marked up, really clean code, and is optimized well, it can get through more. So it can index more of your content. So I think that's like really important, is like, this is the foundation of the web. This will help you get ranked better in Google. It will help you get found better by the bots. And it will help more of your content get found. When I talked about the schema.org markup, that is, and anyone on Shopify, this is just automatically in there, but anybody who's custom building sites doesn't get this type of thing. So this is basically a label that's attached to the content on your website. So there's a label next to the name of the product name. There is a label next to the price. There's a label next to the sale price. There's a label next to the SKU. All of these things, it just labels that content. So it leaves, there's no ambiguity to what the bots are reading. They read it and they know this is the title, this is the price, this is the sale price. If it's not marked up and there's two prices on the website, and we as a human see price and sale price just as a strike through, but the bot might not be able to understand those things if it's not well marked up. So from like the absolute basics, having done nothing else, clean code and well marked up structure would be my number one. And then there's a million other things that we can do from that point. So Michael, you have a lot more data and research on this bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think David and what he's doing at Origin, they're very much on the cutting edge of this, and on the structure side, I'm not as much of an expert there. I think Centium is living more on the content side, and what type of content does AI like, and we're helping brands optimize towards that. Just one note on what David said there. AI compute is very resource heavy. We know the amount of NVIDIA H100s that everybody is trying to buy, and the amount of energy that it takes. And so if you're making it difficult for AI to calculate and make and reason and come to its conclusions on your website, I would imagine they're not pouring every resource into scraping your entire page. I think there's people that will. There's a lot of theoretical ideas that maybe AI is only looking at the top portion of your page, or maybe it goes to the bottom. I don't have any data to back that up, but I think everything David is saying and making it easy on AI aligns with what their biggest constraint is, which is compute and energy. We're more in the content game here. So, Centium, we're running hundreds of prompts, and we're seeing the type of content AI likes and where it likes to go. And in the SEO days, you could create hundreds or thousands of web pages for every individual little keyword and optimize towards it. And we don't necessarily see AI do that. We see one very powerful web page work across a variety of very different prompts that are very different from one another. And AI is seeking, I'd say, very certain types of content. And the things that we see really rise to the top. I would think about AI like as an evidence-based thinker. I think in marketing, we do a lot of our push playing on a human emotion. think about Nike and just do it and all of those campaigns. Well, what does just do it mean to an LLM? Probably nothing. And LLMs are a little bit more logical thinkers. And so they're looking for a lot of these credibility signals that we were talking about earlier, reviews, rankings, best of lists, accolades, specs, any sort of data that it can use to help make decisions. We see drive outsized citation. And so on your website, I think you have your story and your everything that you're doing for humans. And I would make sure you feed LLMs some of these things that they're a little bit hungry for. If you've been mentioned in any of these best of media lists or in any of these gear guides, amplify that. Build a page on your website. Talk about how credible your product is, because we see AI go back to that content quite a bit. And that way you're increasing the amount of places AI could find that story. It was on Gear Lab, or it was on Gear Junkie, and now it's also on your website. And there's more places where AI could find it. And as it trains and indexes content, it increases the chances that it is finding that piece. And so we talk about this at Centium as content amplification. And we see it work really well for brands where, if AI really likes pizza, and I'm calling pizza reviews, like, let's feed it some pizza and let's give it some really nice pizza on our website and give it the type of content that it's looking for. So things like any sort of evidence-based metric, statistic reinforcement, I would be thinking about that for your brand, however it may exist, to help AI come to the conclusion that you are credible and somebody that should be talking about.
I can only imagine the conversations that go on inside the Origin offices, where the creative side, the storytellers, the people who want to bring out the feelings and emotion, and David's like, hold on, guys, hold on. The bots want the pizza. We got to give it the logical pizza. As somebody, for myself, who loves a good story, and that's the part of the brand I love, is like, make me feel something, talk the emotions. It kind of hurts a little bit to hear that, but I also understand.
Couldn't agree more. It's so funny. So Stephen Coomer is our creative director, and you are absolutely on point, Christian. We have genuinely argued about this, because those brand feels, those marketing lines that are, really heady, they're just not as useful anymore. So who do we prioritize? And this is my exact point. We're at 50-50. Neither of us get to win at this point, because the bots and the humans are about the same. I think this is where it comes to that discussion of, like, where do we prioritize the humans and where do we prioritize the bots? And so, maybe the page goes on and has lots and lots of information below, but the top of the page, we know humans don't read. We know humans are lazy. I don't read websites. I just see the big headlines, click on a few things, look for some icons, and I move on. So, maybe there is a place there for that kind of thing. The reason I called out Rueckert earlier is because I was doing some research last night on running shoes, and I wanted to kind of just do a human-based test of running shoes. And Hoka is a really good example where I think they've tapped into something really interesting, where on every single one of their product pages, they actually have right now, like, this shoe is best for, and it has like a list of who it's best for. It has a list of features. It has the cushion number. And so what these types of things are doing is, like, I know Solomon does the same thing, where they have like their fit checkers. Hoka does it. They're really good for humans and they're really good for bots. And so you've got this like best of both worlds is, when somebody's looking for one that's, more stable in the ankle, these are the things that humans would look for. And these are the things that the bots need to be able to ingest. So Hoka's just a really, really good example. I know Solomon does it. I know, back in the day, the snowboard brands like Capta, they used to have these incredible like spider charts where it would talk about the flex and the shape of the snowboard. Capta was always one of my favorites for that, because it was great for humans, and humans could really quickly glance and see whether this snowboard was right for them. But these like facts and figures now, think about them like almost like FAQs, right? That's something that we see, FAQs are often referenced in those Google snippets. They're almost like statistical FAQs. And I would recommend that if you have facts, figures, and features, that you find really good ways that you can combine those to be good for bots and to be good for humans. So
I think that's a great point to bulletproof yourself against all the different types of searches. I did want to give just a devil's advocate opinion for the creatives, though, as we talk about the emotional human content. We all love it, but it's kind of meaningless to the bot. However, bots feed on human, or not bots, LLMs feed on human signals. And so if your real great emotional story behind your brand inspires humans to buy your product, your humans love the product, they buy into the brand story, and then the humans go talk about you online, then the bot will ingest what the human said. And so you do need great product, great story, satisfied customers, and you need them out telling your story online. Then the bot's going to pick up that signal and recommend you. And so, the AI models may want to eat pizza, but maybe the best way to cook pizza is the human coming up with the ingredients. I guess I'm getting pretty deep down this analogy here, but the human is inspired by your story and gives them the ingredients to make some pizza or something. I don't know. One other point on what David said, I think that's really smart. I hadn't seen Hoka do that, and I think that's very smart. In reality, and if we think about each of our own user experience on LLMs, it's rarely just one prompt, one result, exit the browser window like a Google search. It's filtering, it's filtering, it's filtering. Hey, I want running shoes, and well, I'm gonna go trail running. Well, I'm gonna go trail running in the winter. The terrain is pretty steep, it's pretty rugged. There's a filtering process as you continue to go down, 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 and the FAQs and certain best for certain types, and that all those ideas that David talked about, I think are really good to keep you in the game a little bit longer. So there's going to be a point in time where the LLM probably cuts you out of that filter as it starts to narrow down on exactly what you want. We see this in the hospitality industry, for example, where somebody wants a hotel room and they want it to have a robe in the room and they want it to have a coffee maker, and you start to filter down, 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 and then certainly certain brands start to get boxed out of that process. And so I think everything David's doing in that space and saying is a great way to keep you in the game for a bit longer.
On that idea of the best of, or the best for, sorry, concept for a website, is it important to have that in text, or can it also be like an image chart? Or is it like, no, it needs to be text and it needs to be tagged next to that product?
I still think we need to keep best practices and accessibility in mind. So if the chart is built with CSS, like it's actually built as a code-based chart, it's not just an image that's got put on the website, then I think you would be good with that. But yeah, anything that's like text over image, or just if it's like an image that's displaying something, it's not accessible for a start. So you do open yourself up to legal problems there, for sure. You also got out some of your market. It might be a small market of disabled runners, or it might be a smaller market, but I really think we should open the door to those people as well. So I'm still doing that. And Michael, I really like your point around it's the old Simon Sinek, right? It's people buy why you do it, not what you do, or whatever the saying is. It's like you still have to have what makes you different on your website, right? We know Patagonia is the prime example. When people buy based off values, if people know that, the name of the founder of Patagonia is Anik Chaudhry, I'm going to butcher it. We know that the values of Patagonia are a lot of the reasons that a lot of people buy from that. So you still need to have that emotional content on the website, because it's still people that are buying it. Again, is that just devil to the devil's advocate? When agents are buying, do they care about values? Do they know your values? Do they buy based off that? Probably. So, is sustainability a big part of your values? They will probably still buy that.
We actually have seen the sustainability piece cited quite a bit by AI across the outdoor industry. And there's specific brands that we have worked with that are in that sustainability category, and we'll see sustainability focused websites referenced quite a bit by AI. So I do think it does take that signal and weight that into one of its decision-making factors. At Centium, we like straight up ask AI, what factors did you consider to make your decision? And there's a chart in our dashboard called, I think we call it decision-making factors. And so AI answers a prompt for running shoes, and maybe it recommends some Hokas. And then we ask it when it's done, what factors did you consider to make that decision? And so we take those, we index those, and we see the decision-making factors vary widely across industries. In the outdoor space, usually performance is number one for whatever space it is. We see it love innovation. we've measured quite a few brands that are in the outdoor space specifically to supplementation. You think AG1 type brands. We've actually worked with quite a few of those, and we see scientific research almost always benchmark in, as a top 1, 2, or 3 decision-making factor. We just measured one of these brands earlier in the week, and we saw ChatGPT specifically went to PubMed and cited quite a bit of scientific research in its answers. And so it loves evidence-based content, and those decision-making factors will depend on the prompts that you're giving it. And we help measure those and see those. So really depends. We see AI is versatile enough, at least to prioritize things like sustainability.
So I'm curious where this leads. You're both marketers and you deal with budgets and you have to allocate limited capital in different ways. With all of this in mind and all the things that you're learning, what should marketers be thinking about as far as like budget allocation, and where should they be considering what to do here starting now?
I'm just gonna pump up the tide of Centium at this point, because I do think that if you go and you get the scan of and using Centium, you can start to see where your industry and who you're competing against. And I think those people who have a really deep attention to detail and can really get into the weeds will very quickly be able to make a really big impact here. So you'll be able to see, where the citations are coming from, and you'll be able to go and, do a lot more PR and a lot more like outreach to these brands. I think doing the scan is your first step, is to figuring out where you currently stand and then being able to allocate your budgets from that. It's just a really, really great way to see how you should spend it, because you know what? You might see a really severe lack in social mentions, for example, and you just need to get your content or recency of content, for example. You just need to get your product in influencers' hands. Influencers, historically, we know that they've been, for the last few years, been kind of, I don't want to say useless. They've never been very valuable. No one buys because an influencer buys something anymore. It's just like that whole thing died. But now influencers are producing video content. Influencers are producing blog articles. Influencers are producing 10, 15 versions of this. And so you could start to see the recency of content, and maybe now influencers, you're using them for a different purpose, but they're now valuable again. And I think you need to do a scan to understand where you currently stand before you start allocating it, because it isn't a one size fits all for everybody. And really there's a lot of different ways you can go with it.
I'm certainly biased, but I definitely agree that you should do the scan. It's not expensive. It's $99 a month starting out. So when you're talking about budget allocation, this is not a significant part of your budget that you're allocating, but Centium gives you the intelligence, like he said, to know where you should be prioritizing, and at least getting that baseline reading to know how often you appear in these AI results and where AI sources content. It will help you know what to do. Centium takes thousands of data points kind of from the data set, and then it generates a strategy for you. It builds you a kind of little marketing plan on what you should focus on. So I'd start with measurement. You could do it with Centium. There's a lot of other tools out there as well. And then from there, I think it depends what the data tells you on where you should prioritize. I think general things that should work for every brand leader listening to this, public relations is very important. And I think a lot of people think about PR as a nice to have, but not a need to have. And I think about public relations a little bit more now like a performance marketing channel. And what do you spend to show up in Google search results? What are you spending in paid search? And public relations and PR is one of the best ways to show up in AI search. And so if you start to think about PR a little bit more like a performance marketing channel, a little bit more like a paid search channel, plus all the other intangible benefits that you get with PR, I think everyone should be increasing their allocation towards PR right now. I think that's very important. I think what David said in the influencer marketing category is really smart. And I think a lot of us think about influencer marketing as Instagram and TikTok and some of those channels. We see AI having issues accessing a lot of those channels. Where it likes to go is YouTube. Gemini in particular and Perplexity will cite YouTube very frequently. Gemini, based on our data, I think the last time I checked was about 26% of all prompts had a YouTube link in the response. Perplexity is about 15%. ChatGPT, not so much. Every model has their own little tendencies, but for AI purposes, I would take a YouTube video with tech or with a transcript where they're talking about the product over a TikTok any day for AI purposes. So it helps you just make those decisions once you see where AI is going. Also, I think, maybe 10 years ago, bloggers were really important. And I think maybe we all strayed away from bloggers. I know in the brands I lead, we cut out some of the bloggers and started focusing on different influencers. Well, now I'm in the space on, I think bloggers are really important again. And I think we need to start putting more allocation towards bloggers and people who put indexable content onto the internet that AI could read. We see that there's a lot of different sources that AI really likes. It likes user reviews. It likes PR and these gear guides. Another thing it really likes is recency. And it goes back to the beginning of the conversation where we know AI is indexed to the internet up to a certain point in time. That's kind of 6 to 18 month lag. So when it goes out and searches for content, it's biasing towards what's new. And we'll see bloggers that we've never heard of, the brand's never heard of, be very, very, very heavily cited in their data set because they just published the exact type of thing AI is looking for, and it was published about a week ago. And so there's this like recency play there too. So there's a lot of things you could prioritize. I think one, start with data and then see what the data tells you and then start allocating your budget accordingly.
The one thing I will add a counter to this as well, not necessarily truly like dollars in your budget, but time specifically. I think we should look at AI as well as an internal tool and an external tool, right? So internally, how can we use AI to do things better? And that might be, like right now, you might write a job description using ChatGPT. It's quicker. It's, it works really well and it helps you move through your day in a better way. But I think there's also tools that we can use to speak on a more personalized level to an end consumer. And I think that's where we should spend a lot more time, is not just sending out one email marketing campaign that goes to everyone in your database. Send out 20,000 emails to your list of 20,000 people. Use AI to do that. And so that's where I would say is like, as you start to look at your marketing plans, again, it's not really an answer to the question of like where you should spend your dollars, but I would really focus spending your time on using AI to create a far more personalized experience, whether that's through your website, using some kind of like, AI gear assistant. Like I know there's lots of AI chatbots out there that can help people find the right product and gear for them, or whether it is using something along Klaviyo lines or something like that, where you can send out emails on a one-to-one basis, or even to like, one to a very small audience kind of level. I would definitely recommend starting to tap into this idea of personalization. There's going to be the number one driver of brand affinity going forwards. And so you need to basically look at ways you can use AI to help do that. Because previously we couldn't send out 20,000 emails, right? We kind of wrote one email and it was like pulling teeth, trying to get information from all the different people to write that one email. But now we can write 20,000 emails using AI. And I think that's somewhere we should be spending our time and our budget, as well as doing the PR and the other pieces.
Yeah, cool. One thing I do want to mention is that we've brought up vibe coding a couple of times, and we've talked about Centium. So Michael, just briefly explain because I know there's people who don't understand what vibe coding is, but also it's super interesting because you essentially built your business, Centium, with the help of AI as your co-pilot. So talk to me a little bit about what vibe coding is, how you built Centium, and then we'll move on to some predictions here for the year.
Definitely. Yeah. Vibe coding. I was vibe coding before I knew what vibe coding was, I guess you could say. I started building Centium a year ago, and I was asking AI, how can I run mass prompts to measure how my business shows up? I was trying to find mass prompts about where to ski in Utah. And I was trying to figure out if there was a way. I'm like, is there a way I could maybe have a bot go into ChatGPT and just like run a bunch of prompts and maybe put them in a spreadsheet for me? Like that's what I was looking for. And I asked Claude, and Claude recommended a Python script. And then I asked Claude to write me the code and started writing the code. And the code was terrible. And the early days of this were terrible. You would chat with AI for like 5 minutes, and then you would run into constraints, and then you would hit your resource limit, and you'd have to go back 6 hours later and try again. And that was the start of vibe coding. Vibe coding is writing code by asking the model to essentially generate it for you. It's more of a chatbot experience, and the model writes code. Early days of this, I was taking the code out of the LLM, putting it into various different coding platforms, and kind of going back and forth, running into an error, copying and pasting the error, giving the error to the AI model, troubleshooting back and forth. Now it's all integrated, and AI will you'll ask the model what you want, and it will go in, it will write the code for you. It could debug itself, and think about it like working with an expert developer that is right there with you. And it sounds amazing, and it sounds super fun, and it's definitely not as easy as it sounds. And there's a whole lot of troubleshooting and bugs, and it takes a while to get to where you want, but it is rapidly accelerating, and rapidly accelerating in that space at the capabilities of what it's able to do. And so right now, anyone that's willing to put in the time could build something. You could build a website, you could build an app. David talked about some really cool things that maybe you could put on your website, like, a chat bot on your website that allows users to determine what gear to buy. You could vibe code your way to that pretty easily right now. And I'm a marketer. I've been working with developers my entire career, where I tell a developer what I want. I wait 2 weeks, I wait 3 weeks. The developer gives it to me. We give the developer feedback. We wait another week, and then we go from there. Vibe coding is essentially that, but the developer is working on it in real time, and you get your results back in a minute or two.
It's super cool. And I wanted to touch on that because I think it's amazing that that's, you kind of scratched your own itch and you've created a substantial business on the side of it. Maybe we'll have a conversation in a year and you'll actually you may not be a marketer anymore. You may be a SaaS business owner extraordinaire, which you already are. But I think it's amazing because to me, it's like, this is where it's going, is the fact that literally 1 year ago, you had this idea, you wanted to solve your own problem. You worked really hard at it. It's certainly not easy, but you did it. When you went from no code to now you've got nearly 100 paying customers who are running on your software, which is crazy. So, and this were the early days. I mean, we're still this is like the 2 megapixel digital camera version of AI right now. So with that in mind, we wanted to end this conversation with, where do you think it's going to, everybody loves a hot take. So let's hear your hot takes on where things are going. What are your predictions for AI for the near term and potentially for the long term? You guys take it where you want to go.
You lead us out, Michael.
Oh man, I think near term, the 1 to 2 year term. I think people think about AI as this. I think showing up in AI models and LLMs recommending you as this kind of cool new edge concept. I think it's going to hit brands' bottom lines here quite soon. David already mentioned they're seeing a decline in Google search traffic, and I think it's going to move from a nice to have to a need to have, and it's going to be a core stack of your marketing process. And I think there may be marketing roles and marketing departments specifically to this. We're not there yet, but I think as it becomes a key revenue driver, there's going to be far more importance on optimizing for LLMs and all of these things that we've been talking about on this podcast. I think AI visibility is going to become a very, very core part of performance marketing very, very soon. I think from there, I think memory is only going to get better in the LLMs. I think the agentic thing we talked about earlier, where LLMs are predicting what you want and acting on your behalf, I think that's going to come a lot quicker than we probably all think. I think the innovation curve is going to just continue to accelerate. And I think we're in this place in a year or two where, as a marketing team, when we're making marketing plans, I think, we do our segmentation, we talk about our target markets and who our customers are. And I think these AI bots, but they're not bots. I think these AI models are largely going to be the gatekeeper to the customer. I think about if I was like working for a toy brand and I'm trying to sell toys, the purchaser is the adult, but who am I directing all of my advertising and marketing at? It's at the kids, and all the commercials are targeted to the kids, but the purchaser is the adult. And I think I don't know if we go quite that far, but I definitely think we're going to be doing a lot of marketing focused on the LLM. And then the LLM makes a recommendation to the human, and we get our end customer through that path. So I think that's where I ultimately think this goes. And I think adoption is going to continue to accelerate, and innovation will accelerate. And I think we're looking at a wildly different future in 5 to 10 years. And, you know, I don't even want to begin to predict what that looks like, if it's like the movie Wall-E or what that ends up being. But I think for marketers and brands, um, I think LLMs will be a core part of our business process and ultimately a very important decision maker in the future.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think there's something that I'm constantly reminded of here is that the capabilities of the cutting edge and where AI is not where most people are. So I think there's a difference in the predictions here of where AI will go and what it will be capable of doing. I think in the next 12 months, that agents 100% will be making purchasing decisions based on a user's preferences. Will 98, 99% of people be doing that? Absolutely not, because there's still that adoption curve. There's still trust. There's still people who are blown away by the fact that ChatGPT can make an image of their cat wearing a funny hat. You know, like some people are still so blown away by the basics of AI. So I think the predictions of where will outdoor brands be in 12 months versus where will AI be in 12 months, to me, are actually quite different, because I don't think that we're going to, the outdoor industry, not to say that we're behind in any way, but like it's hard to get like organizational change. It's hard to change processes and to move a lot of things. And that's where I think startups hold the biggest key. And just to go back to the vibe coding thing, if you have an idea as a startup founder that you're a goggle brand and you want to make a little animation that puts a goggle on any animal, like, hey, I've got a donkey that wears my goggles, I'm making stuff up absolutely on the fly. You could vibe code that in 15 minutes and you could put that feature on your website and get a bunch of PR. Can Nike do that? No. They got a whole bunch of bureaucracy to go through. They don't even make goggles, but they got a whole bunch of bureaucracy to go through before they can get to that. And so I think vibe coding is one of those things that, specifically for the core audience, will be really, really good. And I did want to call out, vibe coding comes in like a lot of different ways, and still there's like complex ways. Like Claude Code, honestly, is probably the most complex vibe coding. But if you actually go and search Google AI Studio, you can build a little game or something in seconds. Like genuinely anybody can do it. If you can type in a search term into Google, you can build something. And I think that's one of those things that where I believe the outdoor industry and startups are going to be able to do some really cool stuff is with vibe coding. I do think that whether this is a prediction or a plea to the outdoor industry, I think the outdoor industry does need to get its ducks in a row for agentic search and agentic purchasing. I think we have to do that in this next 12 months, because anybody left without the ability to put their product feeds into LLMs or to like the search engine optimization aspect that isn't being found in these LLMs within the next 12 months, I think that you will be exponentially hurt in the future as we go forwards in terms of being found. I think we are in a place right now where the work that you put in over the next 12 months to get found in these LLMs will be exponentially greater for the future. And so I would say that if in the next 12 months there is ambiguity about whether to spend a couple $1,000s on Google Ads or whether to spend it on a platform like Centium to actually understand and then build a marketing plan off it for AI, I think you should definitely do that. So that would be my prediction of where the outdoor industry should go.
My hot take on it is that, and this is something I heard Kevin Kelly say probably 10 years ago, one of the first conversations I ever heard somebody talk about AI, and his prediction, we said, I don't think it's going to be as good nor as bad as we project it to be. So yeah, huge conversation. Thank you both for bringing this very specific to I haven't heard this conversation yet for the outdoor industry. So I'm really stoked that we were able to have it, and like very useful and tactical for people. Where should we send people to learn more about what you're up to? Suggestions if they want to learn more about AI, just kind of on a daily or weekly basis. Like what would you guys suggest?
I think something that Michael and I had been chatting about is that Centium is an incredible platform, Centium AI, an incredible platform to get a lay of the land of where you are, and gives you some really good recommendations within the platform in terms of what you can do. If you need so go there, sign up for that, do a scan, pay it monthly. If you need the human aspect, the marketing plan, the AI marketing plan, and the human strategy behind it, that's where Origin comes in, originoutside.com. And I think they're the places that we can both live in harmony in this world. I always use Google Analytics as the prime example of this thing. Google Analytics gives us lots of great information about our website. And you can have all of that information, but how you actually understand and interpret that information and what you do with it, not everybody has that skill set to be able to do it. So I think that's the same here is Centium gives you a lot of incredible data. And then if you need some help with how to actually activate on that data, how to build a marketing plan and how to optimize for it, that's where you could reach out to the Origin team. So that's where I'd leave a recommendation there.
Yeah, Centium is with a C, by the way, CENTIUM.ai. Man, David is brilliant. I learned an incredible amount just on this podcast from David. I think this is why I just love talking to this guy so much. Centium and a lot of other AI visibility platforms will help you get some data, and you need to decipher that data, but you really need to act on it. And what David is doing, and this guy is smart. And I think the team at Origin is really a good spot to go. As far as like next steps and things like that too, I really would recommend trying that vibe coding thing for anyone listening. Just jump on one of these platforms. Google has some really great ones, and just, make an app for, tracking your runs, or make an app that helps you plan a vacation or something. Just enter the arena, play in the sandbox a little bit. I think now is just a really good time to ensure that you're staying up to date on everything that's happening. And I think playing in the sandbox and kind of, kids learn by playing. And I think with AI, that's a really good way to go. So we love to work with any brand listening to this at Centium.ai. And I think David and the team at Origin could really crush it on what they can do for your brand.
The other thing I will say is I'm going to put it on this podcast so that we have to do it, Michael, but we've been talking about this idea about creating some industry benchmarks as well, that we could actually have some industry reports. We are currently working on one. We're speaking at a conference next week for the National Ski Area Association. We're going to do a ski industry one where we benchmark some of these key findings as an industry, not just as an individual, because I think that would be really, really useful. And that's something that we want to kind of look at replicating on an ongoing basis, where we could have, the outdoor industry is a difficult one because skiing is encompassed in that, but we would like to produce maybe there is a soft goods and a hard goods report where we analyze a lot of these different things and create reports for that. So that's something to look out for as well. If you sign up to the newsletters on either of our channels, I'm sure that type of thing will come out through those channels too.
Very cool. That'd be very helpful. Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate both of you taking the time, doing the work that you're doing. It's super awesome to have this conversation. One thing I will say, if you're interested in learning, I'm just a middle-aged dude just trying to hold on for dear life here. And so one thing is I subscribe to superhuman.ai newsletter, and it's a bit of a fire hose. It comes out daily, but that allows me to at least have a finger on the pulse of being able to see how it's moving quickly, and allows me to keep a finger on the pulse of what's happening and keeping up to date with news and prompts and new tools. So I would highly recommend it. And I will link to all the things that we've mentioned in this conversation. They will be in the show notes. So you don't have to go Google searching or ask your LLM. I will have it in the show notes for you. Gents, thanks so much. I appreciate it a lot.
Yeah. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. That was fun.